Alright, got a PC case design for you. Now granted, this ain't an original idea, as there are many others doing it, so you could ask, what's so special about this one? Well, I'll tell you. I've been refining this design for over a year, trying out everything from attaching the front panel with magnets to testing different kinds of Wi-Fi antenna. And it takes its structure from my previous battery pack design, which is like two trays back to back, glued together to make them one. And this slides into an external sleeve with a lid that forms the front panel. So it's like a 3-piece computer case. It's very simple and can be printed in under 10 hours, using vase or corkscrew mode to get nice consistent layer lines. You build your system on the tray with easy access and only slide it in at the end. A concept I haven't seen in any other 3D printed computer cases, and I'll show you what it's like to build in. So, anyone who's built a PC before will be familiar with this. I already got the CPU and RAM installed, and I'm adding a Wi-Fi card with these internal antenna, which I'll talk about in a minute, an SSD, and now we got this weird Pico PSU thing. There's not enough space in this case for a proper PSU, so I'm using an external power brick. The Pico PSU just passes along the 12 volts from the brick and does a little conversion for the 5 volt items. I'm using an XT60 connector with this, which is what I found to be the best and most reliable DC power connector. So, with the Pico PSU installed, you can plug in the CPU power cable, and then take a look at this riser cable. This is just a cable that lets you move your graphics card to somewhere other than on your motherboard. In this particular case, it's to move it to the back of the motherboard. Once that's plugged in, it's time to drop the motherboard into the tray. It has a slot on each side, one for the GPU cables and one for the power and other cables. You want to remove this slide out thing before installing the motherboard. It's a Wi-Fi antenna holder. This is something I put in the design previously that I no longer use, as I currently have these internal Wi-Fi antennas, which I made myself, but they're just copies of the things you find in a regular external Wi-Fi antenna. I added some notches to the front panel to hold them, because you know, external Wi-Fi antennas just don't look as good. Something else you might have noticed about the tray are these holes along the front. They're sized so you can stick in some 5mm LEDs and get some lighting in your case. You need soldering skills to do this, so it's not for everyone, and I was considering deleting it from the design. But it doesn't hurt to leave it in, so consider this an optional feature. So, back to the build. I'm just going to grab it by the CPU cooler and hold it above the tray while feeding through the cables. You can reorient it to make it easier for yourself. And I like to hide the excess cables through the bottom slot, like this. And now we can secure it with some screws. Okay, let's flip it over and look at the GPU side. Here we want to make sure the GPU power cable is coming out like this. Then we can screw in the riser cable, and then there's a little clip you can push the power connector into. For the video card, it's a good idea to plug in the power cable before putting it into the PCI slot. There is also some space for a storage drive below the GPU, though not enough for a 2.5-inch drive. You could use an M.2 to SSD adapter like this, but a better solution is to simply pop open a 2.5-inch drive, revealing that it's mostly air, and just use the circuit board without the cover. And these circuit boards are small enough that you can probably squeeze 2 of them in here. Now for the front panel. These USB modules come with long cables, which is kind of annoying. So you need to get a bit creative with the cable management. I use the riser cable sort of like a clip to keep the USB cable tidy. Something like this. Then I'll run the ribbon cable back and forth along the bottom of the tray until it's the right length. And once all that's plugged in, along with the power button, that's pretty much it. It's ready to slide into the external sleeve. There's no case fan. I found I didn't need one with this layout, as the components can draw in fresh air directly. You can feel heat coming out the front while gaming. Now the sleeve has these tabs to secure the front panel. They're reliable and hidden from the outside, but they're not ideal, as you have to be careful not to catch your computer on them when you slide it in. This is very much an exercise in squeezing things in as tightly as possible, which means it's only compatible with the lowest profile CPU coolers. Even the stock Intel cooler doesn't fit. But what you end up with is a very compact machine. Here's an Xbox controller for scale, and it's quite robust, as you can imagine. Shake it and there's hardly any movement. And that's the design, though this particular gaming style shape is just what I used when prototyping this thing. Here's one with rounded corners. It looks a bit more professional than the original. I'm not sure which one I like more, but the files for both will be available, so it's up to you. I'm gonna hold off on selling the physical item, which is what I did with my previous designs, as it not only takes a lot of time, but is also quite tedious. So I'm making myself a Patreon account to see if I can get paid like other YouTubers. I'll also list the files on my eBay and Etsy stores, and I'll make another video going into the materials, print settings, and what parts you need to produce this design. It should be out in a week or so. Until then, have a good one.